This is Lesson 12, All Hands on Deck. The sun seems to be slowly backing your back. Did you just hear a sizzle? Like a giant piece of bacon, you can feel yourself wilting and crisping in the hot sun. Your pickaxe slowly and carefully chips away at pieces of rock, which you painstakingly sweep away so that any fragments don't damage the delicate fossil. You sit up straight and stretch your back, which reminds you that you have been hunched in the same position for hours. You have been so absorbed in your work you forgot how thirsty you are. Sweat drips off your forehead, stinging your eyes. All around you, people work diligently, intently, and carefully. The unrelenting clock of seasons seems to be ticking at an unfolding rate, reminding everyone that the rains are coming. Time is short, yet the work is long on a dinosaur expedition. Taking a few gulps of water from your canteen, you change positions and continue carefully chipping away the rock, determined to excavate just one more bone. While we are armed today with much more knowledge, scientific tools, 3D imaging, sonar, and even computer software that can help analyze information, dinosaur dig sites haven't changed much over the years. They still require the careful hands of people who can adapt to the changing needs of the bone and soil conditions where they are excavating. This scene could describe a dig over 100 years ago, just as easily as it might describe a modern excavation. Today we are going to learn about one of the largest dinosaur sites in history and the incredible discoveries that were made there. A spark. In the early 1900s, Germany held control in a number of territories in Africa. In German East Africa, today known as Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, a German mining engineer saw huge bones sticking out from the side of a path near the bottom of a hill. This hill was comprised primarily of sandstone and a part of a formation similar to the Morris Formation we read about earlier. It was known in the local language as Tendagua, meaning steep hill. When German professor Edward Frost heard of it, he went over to inspect it for himself and took some specimens back with him to Germany. The Humboldt Museum from Nanterkendi in Berlin decided to send an expedition to the area, but first they needed to find a team of people, as well as the money to fund the work. The museum director reached out to the prominent and wealthy people he could find, hoping to inspire them towards the cause. His efforts were rewarded when he received both government assistance and over 100 private sponsors. With funds in place, the expedition just needed a leader. The museum chose none other than Werner Janschen, considered Germany's leading dinosaur expert at the time. Janschen packed his bags and set out to hunt for dinosaur bones, likely not realizing just how big the expedition was about to grow. The first Tendagua expedition. In 1909, when the first expedition set out, Janssen was in charge of hiring and training local indigenous people to work the site so that they could beat the monsoon seasons. His first round of local workers totaled 170 people. While you might think that was more than enough, there were a lot of factors to be considered. Being out in the middle of nowhere, food had to be brought in, water had to be carried, and bones that had been excavated had to be carried out. More and more people were needed, and the Tanzania team grew exponentially. The workers brought their families to live with them there, and before 1912, there were practically a small city at the dig site, with around 900 people living there. The more people, the more food, the more water needed. The women and children had to care for the sick and the injured, carry water, cook, and help carry fossils in the many trips out to the seaport of Lindy, journey that took over 4 days. Despite the incredible labor, the first shipment back to Germany included over 4,300 bundles of fossils. Some of the bundles were too big to carry on one journey. This meant over 5,000 trips in the hot sun there and back. The first expedition was believed to have produced over 100 skeletons and about 250 tons of bone and rock. Reaching about 4 square miles, the deep pits provided work and money for many. But with the rising number of laborers, money was running out, and war was on the horizon. The digging stopped as World War I raged, and the original team never went back. Many of the fossils that had been found and brought to Germany were destroyed in the bombings. However, the most prized fossil, a nearly complete giant Brachiosaurus, as it was known at the time, survived and is still on display to this day. Graphitan is another dinosaur we're learning about, and the name meant Titanic Giraffe, found in Tanzania, Africa, and it was also a herbivore. When Janison studied the giant sauropod fossil, it was very similar to the partial fossil found earlier in America by Elmer Riggs. Therefore, it was originally thought to be a type of Brachiosaurus. It wasn't until much later that the differences between the two fossils became too much to dispute, and the rules of taxonomy dictated that a new name needed to be found for the latter discovery. Remember, the former name stood, as it was, the oldest. Based on comparative anatomy between our long-necked sauropod and modern-day giraffe, the two dinosaurs were reclassified, placing them into two distinct genera, Brachiosaurus and Graphitan, that they are known by today. These giants walked on all four legs and had a sloping angle from their necks all the way to their tails. Like the other sauropods, they are believed to have used their height to reach the tops of trees where food was more plentiful. Slowly moving and perhaps living in herds, they are assumed to have been gentle giants. The second Titanic expedition. In 1924, after World War I, the British sent out an expedition called the British Museum East Africa Expedition. This dig was led by several different people over the years and lasted about 7 years. During this time, local Africans were hired who eventually grew in skill and knowledge and even continued digging through the monsoon seasons. The challenges in these digs were great: miscommunication and language barriers, disagreements, malaria and sickness, challenging weather, and even fires. Finding laborers proved relatively easy, but keeping them was another thing entirely. The expedition ended in 1931 with funding ran out due to the Great Depression. During this time, many dinosaur bones were shipped to the British Museum, including parts of the Kendrasaurus, Dicelotosaurus, Elaprosaurus, and Tornaneria, and more. In the expedition's final year, another Graphitan fossil was found. This one was more complete than the first one before. It was the crowning glory of the expedition, which had found mostly partial skeletons and mixes of bones. Similar to the Allosaurus dinosaur graveyard in Utah that we learned about in Lesson 10, scientists believe that the dinosaurs of Pangaea also died in a flush of floodwaters, which mixed the bones of many different species in one region. The Kendrasaurus, while the remains were mostly mixed together, the Pangaea beds contained the bones up to 70 different Kendrasaurus, which means spike-like lizards, fossils. Scientists have used this to support their theory that the Kendrasaurus were herd animals that nested and traveled in groups. Scientists use this jumble of bones to put together just two reconstructions. Plates that went about halfway down their bodies transitioned into spikes and were thought to help defend them from predators. Unlike the Stegosaurus, the Kentrosaurus was unique in that it also had two spikes bilateral placed on either side of the body above its front legs. It was much smaller, about a third of the size of its cousin, the Stegosaurus, measuring about 15 feet long. The Kentrosaurus had a small, walnut-sized brain, like other Stegosaurus, and was thought to eat from low-lying grass and brush. Dinosaurs in Alaska. While the initial discovery may have been by a German, most of the actual labor in excavating the tundra beds were done by indigenous Africans, who all worked together, man, woman, and child. One of the largest and most successful digs in the world, the Tundra expeditions provided paleontologists with more evidence that similar kinds of dinosaurs were found all over the world. This has led to a greater debate about something coined Pangaea, a theory that states that the Earth was once one large supercontinent that separated. Some believe that dinosaurs used land bridges that once existed over shallower parts of the ocean. Others believe a combination of the two ideas. The truth remains that the giant dinosaurs of Africa closely resembled the giant sauropods found in America. They were even found in a similar formation. What do you think? An optional activity. On a team like on the Tundra expedition, each person brings different strengths and skills that the others rely on. Work together and rely on one another as they play the listening game. Build a simple obstacle course, ask your parents to make it sure it's safe, and take turns leading one another blindfolded through it with only your words. The blindfolded person has to listen carefully and trust the one who is guiding them. Is it easy or hard to rely on someone else? Talk about it and then switch places and play again. This concludes our lesson 12, All Hands on Deck. Thank you.